questions as you go home and review, feel free to contact us and we can talk you through it, okay? Quickly, the upcoming dates. So you know the next session is next week. We have our training before each in-school session just to get you up to date on the curriculum and enrichment on the curriculum. These two in December and January are not mandatory. Our next mandatory is here late January, early February. Okay, so this is what session 2 looks like. So you have your opening. Oh, and by the way, this is the page number in the curriculum guide if you want to follow along in the curriculum guide. But you have your opening. That's going to include a journaling activity this time, basically getting the students to reflect on what have they learned about themselves in the last month since you saw them. So that'll be in their tracker. They have a journal page in there. You can direct them to that, give them a few minutes, and then they can present out. Icebreaker is the note card snowball fight. So everyone, including mentors, will get a little note card, like an index card. You write one interesting fact about yourself, crumple it up, and then either throw it on the floor or you can collect them back from the students. They pick a note card that isn't theirs, open it, read it out loud, and then have 3 guesses as to whose it is. It's a nice way to kind of figure out, more about your classmates and about the mentors. Our career stories. So that's where mentors are going to have more opportunity to share about your career pathway. So what did you envision for yourself when you were in 8th grade? And then how did that kind of play out in your path? Did you actually follow what you thought you were going to do, or did you do something different? And then also there's a Naviance assessment that leads into this activity. So you'll want to go on Naviance, and it's called the Career Key Explorer, Career Key Profiler. And that'll give you your Holland code, which is basically your career personality. And so that becomes part of your story you share with the students too. So you get that data and you talk about how does that relate to the actual path you followed, or does it not really relate. So there's a template in your curriculum guide that kind of guides you through what you can talk about with the students. Okay? So each mentor will present for just a few minutes to the whole group that you're working with, and then you divide into smaller groups and you give the students just a few minutes to talk with each of you about your career pathway and ask any questions, or you can prompt that discussion too. Okay? Take a break, and then the bulk of this session is on understanding the career clusters. So we talked a lot about high school choice and how it's aligned to the different career pathways, right? So this is where you're going to have a lot of time to talk to the students about the different careers that are out there. So there's 16 different career clusters. There are copies of the posters that you'll receive in your curriculum guide. So basically, we have 16 different posters. So this one, for example, is the Arts and Communication. So as a group, you'll walk through each of these posters. You'll talk about what that means. So this says interested in designing, producing, writing, or publishing multimedia content. And then there's just 4 careers listed that are examples of careers that fall in that cluster. Okay, so you walk through the 16 posters. While you're doing that with the students, they also have a worksheet, and there's a copy in your book as well, that outline the different clusters, give them the kind of the definition of what the cluster means, and then there's a space for them to write down an example of 1 or 2 of the careers you're talking about. So they can kind of engage that way while you're working through this as well. Another piece to that activity is the career cluster guessing game. So on your table, you should have a little deck of cards, and I just bring that to your attention. These will be at the school for you as well. But basically, they list a career and then describe the career. So after you've gone over all of the posters and they are starting to form an understanding of the career clusters, then you're going to go through this. They get into 2 teams, and one student can read the career. So aquatic ecologist is this first one. Research and work in areas of water, monitoring and analyzing wildlife. So then as a team, they're going to guess which of the career clusters we just learned about does that fit under. Okay? And the answers to all of these cards are also in your curriculum guide, so you'll have the answers, the students don't. But it's a nice way for them to apply this knowledge they've just learned. Okay? We also want them to connect the career clusters and their Holland codes, so that Naviance assessment, the career personalities. So towards the end, you're going to kind of all talk about the different hauling codes again and how that connects to the career clusters. So if you're a social person, if that's one of your career personalities, which clusters do you think as a group that would work with? So should you maybe look at human services? That might be a good one for you because you're social, you should interact with people. Okay, and then you can write that on the actual posters. They can also kind of tape this up or use that adhesive we gave you, the cards, once they guess which cluster it goes in, on the poster. So at the end of the session, they're going to have these posters that are filled with more information that they've learned throughout the session about those career clusters. The individual work is them going around kind of reviewing everything you've done, so looking at the posters up around the room and thinking about which ones are most of interest to them. So personally, what sounds good. And on their worksheet, they can star next to the ones they're interested in. And then you want them to narrow that down to 2 or 3 at the end. So you kind of talk through that with them. And then a large group debrief, so just kind of talking about everything that they've learned and talking about those 2 or 3 clusters that they narrowed down. And are they very similar or are they kind of different and kind of why did they choose those? Okay. Yes?
So they'll be bringing their own individual they'll have their own.
So you will probably, I'll send the spreadsheets again. So you'll have the spreadsheets. So I would print them out. Every time we do a Naviance assessment, I would print them out for your students. They do have the worksheet in their tracker. Unfortunately, it doesn't become that practical for them to get the tracker before they go into the Naviance session and then put it back. So a lot of times what will end up happening is they might not have that information. They will have taken it, but you might need to refresh. Yes?
That was in the first session, thinking about the hauling codes that everyone was confused because we didn't have that information. The kids didn't have that information. We didn't know where to get the strengths.
The strengths were the first session.
Right, but there was something that they needed us to fill out in section 1 that referenced hauling codes. And we didn't have any information. We skipped that part.
Okay, so I don't know where that's mentioned. We'll have to take a look at that, but it starts in session 2. The hauling code starts.
In the trackers, they go to the first page of the tracker they're supposed to fill in. There's something about
Oh, the Who I Am page, yeah, that's something they fill in throughout the year. So you won't know a lot of that information until you go throughout the year. So the last session, they should have just filled in their strengths on that page. And then at this session, they'll be able to fill in the hauling codes. Later on, they'll fill in their values, stuff like that. Yeah.
It said page 1, so the kids pretty much put in what they want.
Okay, yeah, they wouldn't know most of that information yet. Yes?
So the Naviance, go through that, they do a separate one every time we meet with them or before we meet with them?
There's 3 Naviance assessments they take throughout the year. So this is the second one. They'll take another one before the session in February.
Okay.
Yep.
So then you'll send us the results and we'll be able to print them out?
Yes, just like I did that last. Yep. Yes.
So you'll send us like a code to get all the students?
No, so I'll send you, what I did last time, what seems to work pretty well for most people, not everyone, is I have a Dropbox folder and I'll send you the link to that and you can go in and download your school's report. So that should have all your students. I mean, of course, if someone is absent when people go out to do Naviance, then they might not have one. Anytime that happens, you can ask them, well, which do you think of these sound most like you? And then we'll get back to them and have them do the assessment, but we don't want to leave anyone out from doing the activities. Yes?
Can we be sure everyone has done the assessment by our second session next week because all the students hadn't done the initial one?
That's the idea. So they've all had, so now all schools would have had 2 Naviance sessions by the time the next session comes about. So like I said, if someone's absent or there was like a malfunction with the system, then that would disrupt it. But they'll have met with our coordinators at least twice for most of the schools. Any other questions? Yes?
Is that site you updated that you get new information?
Yes. So I'm going to take down all the old reports and put up the new reports. It'll have the...
Like my promotion spread, those 6 students show up now with the strike?
It depends. It depends on if they've gotten back to it yet or not. They may not have, but then by the end of the year, we'll get back to them so that when they do their Who I Am shirt, they'll all have as much as we can get out of them. Any other questions? It's a little past 4 already, so